Swivl Sessions, interviews with field service entrepreneurs. Get insights and strategies from those who took the leap and risked it all to start their own home service companies. Awesome talk, Jeremy, with Tim Johnson from Vulcan Mobile Welding. What do you got?
Well, I was kind of blown away by how he is building Vulcan on a foundation of honesty and integrity. And he talked about how he passes along quality with value to a lot of his customers where it's needed.
His background and where he came from to owning his own company, always saying to take the risk because you'll be rewarded for it. If you don't, you'll never know. I was so impressed with the way that he has that kind of work-life balance, but take the risk was a big takeaway from that. So again, Tim Johnson with Vulcan Mobile Welding. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Swivl Sessions, where we dive into the world of field service entrepreneurship. Now, before we get into today's interview, let's introduce the hosts you'll be hearing from. First, let's meet Edgar, our self-proclaimed sales wizard who can close deals in record time. Just don't ask him to explain the difference between accounts and contacts in our CRM. Despite that little hiccup, his charm and questionable CRM skills still keeps our pipeline flowing.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for those kind words. I'm actually getting better every day with it. Tim, I'd like for you to meet Tyson over there in the corner. He's our resident customer service guru, and the only guy we know who could land a job at his mechanic's shop just to dodge repair bills. When he's not dodging elevators, Tyson's busy leading the charge to keep our customers happy. That's John Tyson right there. Hey, there's a dog.
Yeah, both of them are interested right now.
All right.
What are their names?
So this is Chloe, and this is the psychotic furry velociraptor. And I've got this one here, Butch. He's a 70-pound baby.
Well, speaking of people that like to talk, let me introduce you, Tim, to Rob. Rob is our fearless leader. He is the guy who is just literally running towards making this company successful. That's because he's got a treadmill in his office, literally. So he's multitasking by making us successful and counting his steps. Take it away, Rob.
Well, it's just a health hazard if I sit on my ass for 8 hours a day. So, today we're excited to introduce Tim Johnson, the founder of and owner of Vulcan Mobile Welding, a highly regarded welding company based in Alfred, Florida, just north of Panama City. They offer a wide range of services that can tackle any welding job you can think of. So we're really looking forward to hearing all about Tim's journey to entrepreneurship. Tim, welcome to Swivl Sessions. It's great to have you here. How are things in Alfred?
So pretty quiet out here, actually.
It's quiet out there?
Oh, yeah, I prefer it that way. So I am, because the way Panama City is set up, everybody thinks Panama City, they automatically think of the beach. You have Panama City and then Panama City Beach. Panama City's changing a lot. A lot of new buildings, a lot of stuff that was swamp is now concrete. So
Probably
it's
some good opportunities for you.
There has been. A lot of it's also same old business thing. It's all about who you know. Every once in a while, it gets to a point where the who you know factor can't work. So eventually they start calling other people, and then it becomes they now know me. So I get kind of looped into that at that point.
Well, that's a great segue into my first question for you. Your background and how you got started in welding. Can you kind of start us off before you started the company and talk to us about that?
Yeah. So I actually got into welding when I was in high school. I was always that kid where if I had a toy, tore it apart to see how it worked. So all my stuff was broken as a child. It wasn't because I didn't take care of it. I just wanted to know what made it work. So I was always pretty mechanically inclined, wanted to work with my hands. And when I was in high school, I actually went to the local Votech and took welding classes. And my junior and senior year, while I was taking those classes, I actually got to compete in Skills USA and actually made regional and state for Florida on the independent welding. Didn't go to nationals simply because we couldn't afford to go. So never went to that. But yeah, got into that. And then straight out of high school, I started working in a fabrication shop there in Lynn Haven, which is a town that's Panama City, Lynn Haven, all them, they're all connected.
Okay.
And worked there for a little over a year. And just before my 1 year mark, they started doing layoffs. And I was one of the newest hires, so I was one of the first people out the door.
The way it
It's a
works.
cruel
I didn't-
world.
I didn't know that they had competitions for welding in high school.
Oh yeah, it's so I've worked with people from all over. I've worked with people from Vietnam, Cuba. I've worked, in paper mills and all like that. So I've met a lot of people that are in this field, and I've always said you've got welders, and then people that know how to glue metal together. There's two different things. Anybody can, take a MIG gun or a stick and just kind of fuse it, but then there's others that, and I'll say I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I've made some stuff before early on that looked absolutely terrible, where now with the knowledge I have now, I would have failed it. But I've also met other people that, I can't even touch their skill level.
How long have you been doing that? Kind of give us a little background on that.
Let's see. I graduated 2016, and I've been in this career field since then, besides a few spots here and there where I just took side jobs.
So keep in mind, like, our audience is basically your audience, because you're going to put it on your website if you want to, so your customers or future customers can see it. But it's also for, like, in a way, we're speaking to future entrepreneurs who might want to launch a welding business. Of course, not in your area to compete, but so we want to be able to tap into your stories, give them a little confidence, and go and maybe they can do it themselves.
Or you're close to getting laid off. Was there an aha moment where you start your own business? Was there just a particular
it was
thing that
pretty
came
much. So a little backstory. I grew up extremely poor. So my mother worked as a paraprofessional, so teacher's assistant. And she raised me and my sister, making, $10,000 a year. Lived in a trailer park. The trailer I lived in was made in early 70s. So I grew up extremely poor, and the environment that I grew up in, I didn't know anybody that had their own businesses. Most people, it was you go in, clock in, you were just another number, make the money that you can and hope for the best. And I did that for a while. And I realized, most companies I worked for, either the pay wasn't good or the management wasn't good or both. And finally, I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I know I can make the money. I know how I want to be treated. I'm going to try something. And I'm like, well, if I'm a firm believer in, if you don't take the risk, you'll never know. And you'll always, second guess yourself later on in life. I've had job opportunities where it didn't work out, but I'm glad I took the opportunity, because I knew I would think, well, what if I had gone and done that? And I wanted to know for sure that it wasn't going to work, rather than, guess my entire life, well, what if it had worked out for me? So that was where I was pretty much on that is, I started working for other people, and some companies were great. The management was awesome. I've got one company. I worked for them for about 2 years. Management was awesome. They didn't pay that great. Small business, and didn't have a whole lot of benefits with it either. But work-life balance was awesome. Management was awesome. Just pay wasn't that great. Worked for other companies where pay was pretty good, but work-life balance and management was terrible. And eventually I just got to the point where, like, I need a balance somewhere, where I need my pay and work-life balance to equal itself out where I'm happy. And so I just took the risk, and I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, I always know I can get another job. If it does work out, I'll just keep doing this. And so far it's working out, so I'm going to keep doing this. I don't plan to
That's
go
awesome.
back.
That's
Good
great
to
to hear.
So my favorite question, Tim, is it's about expectations. So always before we start businesses, we have this expectation of it. So you're expecting to have a good balance, and oftentimes our expectations don't turn out to be as realistic as we might think. What is your experience in terms of those expectations and how they were met or not met?
I guess the biggest expectation, and this is just personal experience from people that I talk to, most of the time people think, if you have your own business, you're going to make a ton of money, and you're gonna you get to do whatever you want. You get to make a time, and it's like, it's partially that. The money does not come quick. It takes a while, especially when you're new. You don't have, the resources or the just the word of mouth and all like that other people do. And so a good chunk of the year, my time was no work, and it was figuring out how to advertise. So a good bit of it, I wasn't making anything. And I went into this early on knowing that there was a good chance for at least 2 to 3 years that I'd make very little money. And this is just off, I'd questioned several other independent businesses around me that do similar work. And that was one thing I was always told is, don't expect to make a good chunk of money for at least 4 years. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go in that with that logic, and I'm just going to do the best that I can, take any work that I can. At the end of the day, I need to make a paycheck. So my expectation was I went in with a logical approach on it, and so far that's been working. I think it's a pretty smart thing to go in there and be skeptical about how your business is going to work out, because we don't know what's actually going to happen. And
Okay.
True. Yeah. I mean, that's, those unforeseen hurdles are oftentimes the things that you don't know what's going to happen. Have you run into any of those? A lot of times it's cash flow problems or employee problems, things that you wouldn't have thought about before.
Not really, actually. The only really issue I've had is with one company. Made good money on it, but their communication was terrible. Early on in the project, the way I do my work is if we agree to a quote has material cost, what I project my hours to be and all. And if we agree on the quote, the down payment is cost of material. And up until that point, communication was great with that company, got the material ordered in. The material they were wanting was a specialty metal. And I sent them a quote 2 months in advance, and then they messaged me a week before July 1st and go, hey, we need it done by the 1st. I'm like, that's not happening. You're ordering, $7,000 worth of stainless steel. That stuff's not going to be here for at least 3 weeks, if I order it today. And that was the only big issue I had. And getting paid on time also with larger companies.
Cool.
We had a vendor form agreement was 15 days, sent the invoice in. So whenever they got the invoice, 15 days. Big problem is they were owned by a parent company that have their accounting is in Malaysia, and started making sense when I was getting emails at 2 a.m. in the morning. And it was always, I'd send my invoice in for the work I did, and I wouldn't hear anything for days on end. And I explained to him like, hey, I'm not trying to rush you. I just need confirmation that this was received. That way I know the email went through properly. And it would get to the point where, pay was past due 10, 15, 20 days. And I've got other guys I got to pay. Luckily, all the people that I have independent contract with me are all friends. They know I'm not going to, take their money or anything like that. I'll make sure they get paid. But that was the biggest issue I had is communication with other businesses.
That's the old Malaysian checks in the mail problem. Seen it a million times.
So you mentioned the independent contractors working with you. How are you running solo, or do you have a group of core guys or ladies that work with you, and kind of how's that structured?
So 90% of the time I'm by myself. I do have a couple friends of mine that I've either worked with in the past or that I knew from other experiences, and I just have them on 1099. One, that way I don't have to keep up with the tax stuff, makes stuff easier on me, which that's actually what I was coming back from today.
Where were you coming from when we talked? You were coming from the
I was coming back from the tax office, so I can get all their 1099 stuff out and then fill out my 1096 for the IRS, so they don't come after me for money.
There you go. Probably a good thing to do.
Headed off the pass.
Yeah. When you, I'm assuming you're working with like GCs or builders. Like, who do you think of when you're like, where am I going to get business? Where do you go? What's your base, so to speak?
So up until about October, most of my work has either been through small businesses or just independent people needing stuff built. I actually started off, the first things I was building earlier in the year was little rocket stoves. I don't know if y'all ever seen those.
The little campfire burning things?
Yeah, it's just made out of square tubing and kind of L shaped with a little feed tube on it. And I started building those, and that's what I just started off building, and slowly escalated. People wanted more custom stuff built. And my first big job that I had a guy that had a boat he inherited from his father, and wanted me to customize it, wanted me to add front deck and a rear deck. And I used to work for aluminum boat manufacturing company, so I had the experience in that, and got that all done for him. He loved it, and finally got everything done. And I started off just doing that for individual people, posting stuff online, putting out ads, posting videos on Facebook and TikTok, and just trying to get my name out there. Also made sure to ask people, please leave me a review on Google.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah. And since then, most of my work in the past 6-7 months has been through either Google, word of mouth, or people driving behind my truck and they see my business stuff on my tailgate.
There you go.
And, yeah.
Never fail.
Hey, that works.
Tried and
Oh,
true. Yep. Okay.
So, all right. So you're by yourself mostly, and I'll ask you more about like your future plans. But tell me like how big the company is now in terms of, we talked about employees. It's mostly you. You have some subcontractors. What kind of revenues we're looking at, say last year, and what are you looking at this year?
So
Or
my
expecting?
total revenue last year was actually, I was pretty impressed. I did not expect to make the money that I did. I went in this thinking, hey, I'm going to total before taxes, before deductions or anything like that, before expenses, I might make 40 grand. That's my expectation. I just finished out my bookkeeping stuff last night. Total revenue before taxes and expenses was $111,000.
Attaboy.
Great.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Now
Love
that you take
Double
out
your
the,
expectations. That's always good.
yeah. I mean, of course, I got, and I came in with this also with the tax point, because my wife has her own business, and that was a question she was asking. She's like, well, how much do we need to save in taxes? And I was like, well, let me look at what I was getting pulled out of my taxes when I worked for the shipyard. And I'm like, well, let's just pull more than what they were pulling out of my checks. So we went in where whatever our profit is, we pulled 20%. So I was able to put away almost $20,000 for taxes. Highly doubt I'm going to spend that much, especially with all the work expenses I had and all the other deductions I get to pull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that 20,000 will make money while it's sitting in an account, right?
Oh yeah.
That's good to hear.
Tim, it's kind of weird, and just getting back to, you mentioned invoices and estimates and things, talking to a welder about technology, but what kind of technology do you use as far as keeping in touch with your customers, sending out invoices, things like that? Is there a platform that you like, or?
So for my invoice stuff, all the paperwork that I've designed, whether it's my invoices, service contract agreements, I actually use Google Sheets and Google Docs, just because the layout is simple for me to use. I'm 26, am nowhere near as tech savvy as some people my age. I'm not that great with computers, so if it's
Join the club.
yeah, I don't know how to use it. But that way, I've got invoices where I have them printed, where I can just hand them to people. Also have it where I've got digital, where I can just modify it for individual companies and send the emails in. And then with keeping up with people, when somebody calls me, my phone is full of contacts that if you looked at it, it would not make any sense. I have 2 people that's listed lawnmower, and then there's something else behind it, so I know who it is.
We all do it with all of our little nuanced ways of doing that.
Yeah. I've got one I'll be doing later in the week. His contact is Dairy Queen trash can, because I got to rebuild the dumpster outside the Dairy Queen. So if you were looking at it, it wouldn't make any sense, but that
Makes sense for
lets
you.
me, figure out stuff that's going on, and then I'll just set reminders on my phone, because I am very forgetful. I'm one of the people where I need something, I'll go to town, don't remember what I needed, spend 2-3 hours in town, come back to the house, and then that's what I need to get. So I'll set a reminder on my phone, make sure to contact them back, get everything needed.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, spreadsheets are, I use Google for lots of things too, but I can tell you this, and this is kind of what we do. We'll have you take a look at it at some point in the near future, but it's tough to grow a business on Google Sheets and Google Docs. So if that is what you're planning to do, which leads us into the next questions really about, like, what's the future look like for Tim Johnson and the welding company?
So as of right now, I've got a company I've been doing a little bit of work for since October. I was supposed to be in Pigeon Forge this week, but they got with this snowstorm, they've had a delay in material getting there. I've been doing a lot of stainless HVAC work for this company, and they're a subcontracting group for another general contractor. And they hired me out to do the work. Liked it enough where they actually let go of their company welder. I don't like that they had to let him go, but there was other issues involved with that of why they did. And other local welders that they had brought in where they'd done all the testing, and I had to come back in, cut all that other company's work out, redo all of it. And that's where it's going so far. And to me, that's what's making the money. So I'm going to keep going with that while I can, get all my other stuff built up. My ultimate goal eventually, which it could change, I want to get back into aluminum boat manufacturing. So I'm actually certified through United States Coast Guard to manufacture aluminum boats.
Nice.
I've got one built right now, still got to finish it out, do all the testing. So essentially it's my prototype. That's eventually my plan. I assume it's probably going to change depending on where my revenue starts coming in at.
That's a passion, though.
Yeah.
Do you see any room for training some apprentices in the near future?
Actually, that was something I kind of thought about. I've got like 3-4 people that I've been talking with for a while, and it's close friends of mine. And I've let them know, I'm like, if I need work and you have free time, or if I have work and they have free time, and I need some help, they've already said they're going to come help me. And I let them know that I don't want to bring you on full time unless I know I can at least equal what you're making now. Simply because the companies I'd worked for in the past with some of these friends, it was always, pay was okay, but it was always, we knew we could go make more money for the same exact work. And that, going back into one of the reasons why I started my business was, I'd worked for companies where I was just another number. They didn't really care that you were there. They're making money off of me. Here's a little bit of change and deal with it. And that was actually the mentality of one of the companies I worked for. They did not care that, work-life balance was, they would write you up if you didn't come in on a Saturday. After already working 50 hours, they'd be like, oh, you didn't come in. Well, here's a write-up. So with them, I eventually want to bring some people on, but I want to keep it pretty small. One, that way I know that I can at least pay these guys an actual decent pay for what they're doing, especially for the quality that the guys that I have planned. I've worked right beside them in the same work, and I know what they can do. And I know that what they're getting paid now, to me, isn't fair. Looking at the pay through the rest of the country, Florida actually is not great for welding pay. The local shipyard I used to work at, I haven't been there for about 2 years now. They've topped their payout at $29 an hour. For the same exact work, you can go to Newport News in Virginia and make right at 50.
Yeah.
Same work, same hours. Yeah. And
a lot of boats in Florida.
Oh yeah. And I've got one guy right now that's been working with me. He's pretty much retired. He's in his mid 50s right now. Kind of does his own stuff, but I've known him for several years, and he's pretty much been my helper. And for a helper, I got everybody on 1099, and I looked at him. I was like, well, how much do you want to make? And he's like, well, I don't know. He's like, well, what do you think's fair? I was like, that wasn't my question. How much do you want to make? I'm like, because I'm going to make sure we both get paid a decent amount. I'm like, I'm not paying you out of my profit. And I'm like, I got to pull taxes, pull other stuff. I'm like, how much do you want to make? Because that's what I'm going to, present to this other company. And he lets me know. He's like, well, how much do, helpers normally make? I was like, well, it depends on the field of work, all like this. So we did some research, and he's like, well, from the average I've seen is 40. And I was like, okay. So I wrote it down for 40. The company was okay with it. I was like, all right, yeah, you get 40 an hour. And I'm like, now we can't charge overtime because the amount of, hours we're working, they will kick me out the door. I surprised the company when we worked 66 hours in 5 days. They didn't think we were going to do it, but we did. And,
wow, that's a lot.
Oh yeah. 6 weeks between him and I, we cleared right at 50. And I think he made a little over 12. So,
That's
and
nice. That's
Day's
nice.
work right there.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
as you
absolutely.
I was going to ask you though. Well, I mean, first of all, I think someone with your skill set is fairly rare. And tell me if I'm wrong, but it'd be a shame, not to build up an apprentice structure to kind of pass that along. That's one. And then two, I wanted to ask you about a pricing strategy. So, I hear you're talking about creating estimates. You do it on spreadsheets, et cetera. What is your pricing strategy? I mean, do you look at a job through the eyes of estimating your cost first and then applying a markup to materials and labor separately? Or do you just say, this is kind of the going rate and this is what we're doing, and then we don't look at, what it takes for the cost side?
Yeah. So normally what I do, so on larger jobs, if I have to order material, normally I'll go ahead, price what the material is going to be. And I try to be fair on pricing because I know, money's tight right now for a lot of people. I'm the same way. I'm pretty cheap when it comes to having to buy stuff. And so what I do is for individuals, I charge a 15% markup. That makes sure I've got a little bit of extra cash in case I do have to get more material. I have a little leeway. I'm not out of pocket anything. But for bigger companies, I charge 20% markup on the material. And that's simply down payment.
And that includes taxes, delivery, et cetera. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
because
get
I
a
normally
quote.
pick up all the material myself. So that markup also, does my time driving there, my time pricing everything and all like that.
Yeah. Is
And
that
then
typical in your industry, or is that? It seems to me it's a little low. No.
well, yeah, I'm a little bit lower. That's actually been,
Strategy.
strategy wise, it's worked for me. I'm also looking at the fact of my wife and I are pretty good about managing our money very well. We try to live way below our means. And like right now, I've got a fence outside the house that I've been working on. If I had to pay somebody to do it, it would have been probably $10,000. I've spent just under $2. So we're pretty good about how much are we making? How much do we need to spend? Do we have any play money left over? But then when I get into my hourly rate, so at my house, I just have a set $65 an hour. And I've had a couple people ask, why is it that high? I'm like, well, you got to think I'm using the power in my house. I've got all this shop material. I'm actually not making 65. A lot of this money has to go back. I'm also pretty fair with a lot of individuals, or if it's something small, takes me 5 minutes. I'm outside in my flip flops and shorts and a t-shirt. And they're like, well, how much do I owe you? I'm like, pay me what you believe is fair. I'm like, I had an off day. I'm not really out here working today. Just pay me something. And a lot of the times they actually appreciate that. And pay
I was
me
about
more.
to say, how's that worked out?
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's like, well, took me 5 minutes. I was only going to charge like $30. I'm having an off day. I'm sleeping. And they'll pay me 50 or $100. And I was like, okay,
That's good.
That's good.
and I've had that's worked a lot for me.
Cash most of the time, right? Wink, wink.
Oh yeah. So I'm pretty good about that. Anything over 400, just report it. And then for larger businesses, I'm pretty much in the middle of what most independent welders charge when it comes to field rates. So I charge $120 an hour out in the field. And then I have a $250 service fee. So if I just show up, it's $250 right off the bat. That covers fuel in my machine, all my consumables, all that. And that just covers that aspect. I know I can get all the fuel I need for a job, all my welding rods, gas cylinders, anything like that. I can go ahead and pay for it off that $250. Even with individuals, I still have that rate. I've gotten to the point now where if it's an individual person and I have to drive somewhere, I've actually stopped charging the $120 an hour for them and gone just to my shop rate of $65. And I still make the money that I'm happy with. It's cheaper on everybody else for it, and they appreciate that more, brings me more work in. Big thing, again, one of the reasons why I wanted to start my own business is simply I had a big issue with greed. I'm not a very greedy person, so I believe, I should make what is fair and charge people what I believe is fair for the work too, because I know a lot of people get overcharged a lot, and I don't want to do that.
And they appreciate that honesty.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, we appreciate your honesty, and we appreciate you coming on this show to tell us your story. You know, we've covered a lot of ground, and it's been a lot of fun listening to your journey, building Vulcan Mobile Welding and fabrication. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you like to share with our listeners or viewers? Anything else you want the audience to take away? For example, if you have some aspiring entrepreneurs listening, what would be your final advice to them as they're about to think about jumping into the world of entrepreneurship?
Best thing I can say is take the risk. Yeah. Because if you don't take the risk, I've always been a firm believer of comfortability is dangerous. If you just stay in a spot where you're comfortable all the time, you're not doing bad, or you're not doing the best, you're in a comfortable spot, well, you could potentially do way better and make your life way better. So to me, if you take the risk and fail, at least you took the risk. I believe you learn from failure, and I'm not afraid of failing. At least I know, hey, that's not going to work for me. Let me do something else. And so, yeah, take the risk. It's worth more to take a risk and fail than not take a risk at all and never know.
Great advice.
Here.
Advice.
Great, outstanding.
All right. Well, that's fantastic, Tim. Thanks so much for sharing your journey and insights with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And your story definitely was resonated with us, and it'll resonate with those aspiring entrepreneurs, I'm sure. So, again, thank you to Tim Johnson for sharing those valuable insights and stories. And it's great to see how much hard work, passion, and dedication you put into building Vulcan Mobile Welding and Fabrication, and how it's paying off. And for all of you watching or listening, if you're in the greater Panama City, Florida area are in need of any welding repairs or fabrications, make sure to reach out to Vulcan. You can find their contact information right here on the screen.
Put your finger up. Tim, there you go, right there.
And believe me, you're working with a true, reliable expert in the field. Once again, thanks, Tim. Thanks for being here with us on Swivl Sessions.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening or watching. Swivl's field service software is everything you need to run your field service business for free. Till next time, check us out at swivl.tech. That's SWIVL.tech. And that's a wrap.